Good evening. Lisa C. Taylor's creative writing has appeared in many literary magazines, including the Worcester Review and the Haight-Ashbury Literary Journal. She's taught here and in other states in the United States and in other countries of the world. I'd like to say I'm very glad to see several of my students here, and I guarantee you that her poetry is something to listen to and will do you good. She's going to be at the Tyrone Guthrie Centre in Ireland this summer. And Lisa received her MFA from the Stone Coast MFA program at the University of Southern Maine. Let me give you a hint about how to appreciate Lisa C. Taylor's poetry. Listen to it. She's not an over-the-top, hit-you-over-the-head shouting kind of poet. She slips her images in. If you drift off, you might miss it, but that's okay, because the poems are short. You can come back in on the next one. Lisa C. Taylor is one of the most visual poets I know. She says, "The sky is a fusion of light and stone." Wait a minute, the sky is stone? She talks about the way darkness and light compromise in midwinter afternoon. Afternoon, a murky version of morning. Afternoon, a murky version of morning. I can see that. I don't even have to close my eyes and I can see that. She says, history of water stored in the muscles of clouds. Wait a minute. She sees clouds as a history of water? She sees muscles in clouds? I never thought of it that way, but now that she shows it to me, I see it too. She even makes me see things that aren't there. She says, in humid August, there's one lone window overlooking a dusky riverbed. Not a signature path or dimpled snow, only silence brightened by the dead. Even as the poet tells me it's not there, she causes me to see it. She says it's not a signature path or dimpled snow, but as I read her, I see them. The path winding along like a scrawled signature with the indentations in the melting snow, I see it. It's sort of apophatic poetry, poetry about what is not, creating an image by telling us it's not there. And then, after the image in that poem, we look at it again and we notice that it's propelled by alternating end-line rhyme. Window, riverbed, snow, dead. I didn't notice it the first time I read it, but it kind of propelled me through the poem. I don't know much about much, but let me tell you something. If you listen to Lisa C. Taylor's poetry, you'll see some pretty amazing stuff. And you'll learn something about yourself. Please welcome Lisa C. Taylor.
Wow, that's creaky. It's always surreal when somebody introduces you. I'm thinking, did I write that? Is that me? But I guess it is. Thank you very much, Edmund. That was just lovely and wonderful. It's really neat to hear lines of my poems talked about in that way, and I'd love a copy of that. It's great to be here. As some of you know, I teach here at Eastern, and that it's my privilege to share my latest book, which is called Necessary Silence, which just launched, like 2 weeks ago in Willimantic, and will launch in Ireland on June 22nd. I just found out that date. And I've been doing some readings all over the place, and I like doing readings, fortunately. This is my fourth book of poetry. It's my second full-length collection. So it's my privilege to share a few poems, and also I put in the schedule, and if anybody wants to, because we have a lot of students here, if you want to ask any questions after, please feel free to do that. I'm always open and enthusiastic about questions. Questioning is wonderful. So I'm going to kind of flip around, and I will read a couple. I kind of like to read a few new pieces so you can see what happens with stuff that's not in a book yet that may go through some incarnations before it gets in a book. But I'm going to start with something from Necessary Silence. It's called Love's Bad Taste. And this actually comes from, poems are born as stories, are born from just little seeds of ideas that you never know where you're going to find them. And I was staying in a bed and breakfast in Ireland, which actually turned out to really be a frat house, but I didn't really know that. And that explained why it smelled so bad. But there was nowhere to work, and the woman was very sympathetic, and she said, well, why don't you go in this little room? We don't really use it. And it had the ugliest chandelier I've ever seen in my whole life. The ugliest. I mean, this thing was hideous. So this poem came out of that. I am in love with the metal grapes hanging from the chandelier. Not that they're beautiful or even classic, but they dare to be purple in a room of somber tones. That's where love comes in, collapsing into raucousness in a back pew, because life just fills us, and we can't help but spill over. Which is why I told you that falling in love is important, and not just for the heady, happy in your skin feeling, but so you know why you're here. And it isn't to tally numbers on a page or even give time away. It is to collapse into someone's arms. You know you want to go running down that corridor, like suddenly there's a reason for broken windows and boring orders. And as long as you can have a few minutes a day, sitting or walking together, you understand the smudged mural in the rundown part of town. It approaches perfection. Try finding anything that would ask so much with no guarantees, make you grope for a light switch in suffocating darkness, change your wardrobe, or buy a garish chandelier, because it's possible to love imperfection, necessary. And it is. Boy, my class, we did love poems, and we just had some discussion about love poems and how difficult they are. They are difficult. Just to make them fresh is difficult. So because I started with a kind of a little backwards love poem, I'm going to do another love poem that's a real love poem. This one really is. And it's a love poem I wrote as a wedding poem for some friends of mine who are fortunately still married. So maybe it was good luck. And they asked me to write a love poem for their wedding. And I'd never been asked that before, and I think, wait a minute, I don't think I can do that. That's just too weird. And now I've written, I think, 4 of them. But this is the only one that really took, that I really ended up in a book and actually was in a magazine and everything. So I can't say I'm like starting a budding career as a love poet, but I did do this one. This is called What Lovers Know. Touch, as if her rounded shoulder is an amber moon glowing under your fingertips. Listen to her voice as she moves toward you in the mountain of night. Your hands are stars that she will draw inside until you're both hot with brightness. Lay down memory for this flash across reason. You will call for her eyes in ragged years as if they were children gathered round to comfort you. What you share cannot be undone by age or sorrow. Her name, her curtain of soft hair, remains within, turning like her whisper toward you. In the eventual darkness, this will be what matters. So what we talked about in my class is just how it's so hard not to be cliched. And I don't know whether I was able to do that or not, but it is really difficult because we all have the same words, right? And it's just in writing, you have to put them in an order that makes them unique, and that's always interesting. So I'm going to break the love poem thing. That's enough sweetness for you guys. And I'm going to go to a poem called Anonymity. And I don't usually read this one at readings, so I'm mixing it up tonight. His hands gold as potatoes, wide-knuckled, unadorned. He could lower his voice to the whisper of clothes billowing, raise it like metal hitting glass. Her mother's eyes narrowed to slate. Peach roses edged with red overran a mowed yard, plagued by beetles every June. The slap of the breezeway door, grind of an attic fan. Clutching a new pencil box and lace-edged cotton socks and Mary Janes, she smiled in response to whiskey or cheese, gave thanks at the lifespan of a table. It's the body that finally remembers, drowning in the open eye of the camera, what she's here for. Silent history, no names, no dates. So one of the things I'm fond of doing is giving a voice to the voiceless, and I think a lot of writers do that. So I like to do poems that are about different people who have different trials and tribulations in their lives. Some I know, some I do not know. This poem's called Memoir. It's actually part of it's on my business card. So I gave myself the challenge of seeing if I could write a poem that was a memoir and do it in one page. I haven't had a very interesting life. It's like, do you still have cliff notes, or what are those little abbreviated notes when you don't really want to, you're not going to tell me because you don't want your professors to know. What are they called? Spark notes. So you don't really want to read this boring book, so you just go and get the spark notes. Well, this is the spark notes of my life. Oh, that sounds kind of cool. I like that. Maybe I should retitle it Spark Notes. A swollen cloud marked your 6th year. 8 gave you a wink of a scar, and a friend who moved to England, foreign as a parrot. Fireplace next to slap. Ache kept company with ignore. The story had a morning, an open window. You walked through the gate to find a tarred road, grim sun. Hidden behind a door in a room called later, decades of longing, beginnings with braided hair streaming. You kept the sea for its ability to block out everything, odoriferous and noisy, as a shunned relative you secretly loved. When you moved to a cacophony of seasons, there were 18 flowering azaleas and thousands of words in a sky-colored suitcase that you had to sit on to close. So a lot of that isn't true. One of the things about poetry is you can make things up, but what is true is that I did leave the house when I was 18, and I never did go back. And I do love the sea, and I read about the sea a lot. So on that note of kind of making stuff up, this was just an idea I had. It's called Ache Boulder, and it's really strange. I don't know where it came from. Thankfully, I spent my childhood locked in the trunk of a Ford, memorizing the texture of car mats, lug wrenches, the bitter smell of rubber. It's what I built a life from until my release on June 24th, 1982. Then, drunk on lilacs, a variance of gray like an ache, boulder, grandmother, I invented sisters, Peony and Cirrus, real in the way we're all real, loved raw, shiny from anger, with nimble fingers that could unlatch, help me tumble from confinement into the dangerous stronghold of the world. So I'm very fascinated with ideas of sort of alternate realities and making stuff up about your past, present, and future. And I think sometimes people have moments where they think, what if I had a different life? Anybody ever have a moment like that? What if I was born here or I did something totally different? So that's what this poem's about. It's called Symmetry. Have you ever thought of leaving one life, stepping into another? The way a shale cloud becomes a heron. Sometimes clouds wear faces, scowling, or breaking into radiance like the open hand of a pasture dotted with violets. Each landscape has within itself a perfect symmetry, limpid shell and leaf, placid sheep that graze without a moment given over to becoming a magpie or clam. The sky shifts again and the ocean drains itself. See how sun on water is green with flecks of sweet, a baritone border. How crabs scuttle to find moisture in pockets of sand, and light skitters across every surface. And I'm going to flip to something brand new, because it's kind of a little frivolous. It's good to be frivolous, right? It's just called Refresh. I have 2 new poems, one I'm not sure I'll share, but this is called Refreshment. Actually, maybe I have 3. And I wrote this, I was at a residency at Vermont Studio Center last summer, and this was one of the pieces I produced. I was mostly working on a novel, because I'm working on a novel, but every once in a while I gave myself the treat of letting me do poetry, because poetry's really fun for me. Refreshment. Outside the window, the yellow warbler reads drops of rain, unearths the scent of worms with her beak. She's rooting in dirt for a mid-morning pick-me-up, while you wait for the barista with a tattoo of a goatee on his chin to plunk a dollop of froth milk on your organic cappuccino. Demitasse, that you'll drink standing up like they do in Venezia, where you spent a semester wandering around Piazza San Marco. Mi scusi, you'd say to a leggy girl in sunglasses, and you'd act directions to a place you had no intention of going, hoping she'd take you somewhere better. Once, it led to sex in her appartamento. Later, the 2 of you sitting cross-legged on her bed, drinking vino, eating crusty bread and olives. It didn't matter that your Italian was as bad as her English. Her tongue said, like that. Your hands improvised a tango on her breasts. And you thought for 5 minutes, or maybe a night, that it would be great to marry someone who couldn't speak your language, which is something you would think at 20. Like the yellow warbler, who right now is not communicating with song, but with grubs, soft and pliant, pressed into 7 open beaks. So this, the idea for that just came from seeing this yellow warbler. And I don't know where that whole story of the barista and the organic cappuccino and semesters abroad came from. When you write, you don't always know where you're going. But, as I tell my class, just trust it. Just go with it. And this is another one that came like that. I saw crows on a fence, and they just reminded me. They took me. This is another newer one. It's called Crows in Translation. 4 crows adorn a guardrail until the thump of sneakers on hot asphalt leads one after the other aloft, pausing a second, like teenage girls who spy on each other with peripheral vision, imitate fingers looped on invisible belts, hips swaying, in the direction of smudged boys kicking balls or stones to calm a frenetic energy they can't name, but in a few years will translate in a dark room with their fingers and tongues. So, who knew crows were like teenagers? But, everything's like everything else, right? This is again from Necessary Silence. It's called Under the Bridge. Don't think about flowers, stamens, and the sorry droop of petals, and forget about the moon. Blemished orb elusive behind dirty clouds, gelatinous slither of creatures without faces. Offer a slice of bread or free advice, an heirloom for someone who has no shoes. Woman weeping under the bridge. She's down to $2 and change. Fears dogs will find her, or she'll tumble on broken bottles, bleed into puddles, and the reservoir will carry her blood to the other side. Kayakers in yellow slickers, a curly-haired toddler with a plastic shovel, finding an empty blouse. Look, Mama, a flower. and the mother will take it, whisper it back to the current, fetid water, mussel shells, the life cycle of a rose. And the ending, don't consider it, because this isn't your story. You can walk home the long way. Don't even need a flashlight. So, as Edmund kindly said, I go to Ireland a lot. I wrote a book with an Irish writer. It's called The Other Side of Longing. I got a fellowship some years ago, and we worked together on this. It was really an awesome experience. So Ireland is, particularly Western Connemara area, is really special to me, and I'll be going again this summer for the Tyrone Guthrie, and also to teach a master class on Inishbofin. They have the cutest names of everything. Isn't that a really great name, Inishbofin? I'll beat you at Inishbofin. I can't quite say it with an Irish accent, but maybe by the time I come back, I'll have that down. So I do write about their landscape a lot. I was just out in the Pacific Northwest. I did a reading in Oregon last week, and very similar landscape and very similar cool and rainy weather. So this is about that kind of weather. It's called In Galway. I have watched rain write its name on dark streets and stone walls, as if to plant something soundlessly in the crevices with an outpouring that might warn or heal. Rain is a haze and patter, stippling sidewalks, crowds shrouded under umbrellas. I am not afraid to be drenched or to wail like wind. It's the discarded nuance of gray I'm after, and the Corrib haunting flinty streets, until traffic slows, day curves into night, and rain tells a story of death and seeds, how everything must change to come into its gleaming. And it really does rain a lot. It might be green, but it's not sunny. It doesn't have to be sunny when it's green. This is another one of those "what if I stepped into another life" poems. You're sensing a theme here, right? But I know there are people out there that do this, right? It's called Possible Island. The sky flings open, and a flock of grackles dizzy the broad pasture. I imagine the first surge in the field of dawn, drip of sunlight cracking open the barn door. Days like this, I hold my breath for something to leap out with 100 inky wings, scarred beaks that swallow air. My life, hips, belly, fingers fertile enough, inhaling what this is, the dark silk of the sea. Across stone walls by winterberry and dogwood, a soaking wind, sharp as bones. I bring myself to every island, with its mossy logs and whelks, a dinghy somewhere waiting. So sometimes I wear a lot of hats in my life. I teach here at Eastern. I also run literacy projects for kids from second grade on up. And I got sort of corralled about a year ago. I had a almost 18-year career in counseling, long time. And I got corralled about a year ago to do stuff on school climate, which is the new buzzword for don't pick on anyone, be nice, right? So they call it school climate, which I always think is a little strange because it kind of sounds like, is it raining or is it sunny? I mean, it's just kind of a weird word, isn't it? So I actually realized that I kind of had, if I can find it, a signature poem for that. Because it's kind of something that I think is very important. It's important for people to feel safe in their environment. It's important for people to feel validated for being themselves. I mean, come on. And there are a lot of people that don't feel safe where they are. And this poem, I was thinking about things that I dislike. Because we all have prejudice, right? And I have something I truly hate. But it's not a person. It's a slug. I really don't like slugs. I don't like ticks either. But this is my poem. It's called "What Slugs Have to Teach Us." The slugs are queuing on the landing, Fat, waterlogged day in June, they begin their trek to the cat's bowl. My neighbor suggests beer, which attracts them, and they drown. Who decides which species are worth preserving? I easily kill a tick, but grieve the sparrow disemboweled by the cat. Garden slugs remind me of what I find repulsive, slow-moving, bloated creatures feeding off spoils. Somewhere, a group cannot bear the sight of me, and this is how it begins. The justification that I am less human, and slugs less worthy than bumblebees, who are less worthy than butterflies and hummingbirds. So when I watch the stronger child push the smaller one, I see how beauty is elusive and kindness slight, spent carelessly. It's true, isn't it? It really is. We need to be nicer. People need to be nice. Those are my wise words for today. Be nice. So, let me see if I can grab a different one. This is an older poem. It's in the collection, but it's older. It's called Beautiful Knowing. And actually the seed for this poem came from the fact that we have a really long and crazy driveway. And many, many years ago, before we bought a major snowblower item, we used to hire a guy. But they'd all quit on us. They'd do like one season and say, this is too hard. We don't want to do it anymore. This is too hard. My truck isn't got good for my truck. And we had this one guy, and he's really cute, but he quit too. But anyway, that was the seed for the poem, is a really cute guy who plowed my driveway. It's called Beautiful Knowing. You never know where ideas are going to come from. And it's totally not about that, but, you just never know. Beautiful Knowing. She yells at children, refuses to recycle. Her particular cruelty is humiliation. Yet someone loves her, turns to gaze upon her fine, angular face in the gray hours of morning. The man who plows my driveway is that handsome, maneuvering his Ford truck up the steep incline, unruly black hair, beat-up peacoat. So I'm back to patronizing thrift stores and cafes in search of bright eyes, warm bulk, bystanders reading Shakespeare in bus depots. I argue with my son, who maintains that there are standards. He is too young to have watched the transformation of plain to breathtaking. It happens suddenly. I'm somewhere, buying tampons or diapers or milk, when I strike up a conversation with the most ordinary of strangers. Before I pull out my credit card, I smooth that stray hair, wonder if he's single, lonely, looking. Far too beautiful to notice me, I think, forgetting how invisible we all are for most of our lives. We wait in queues, buy supplies, never notice that the grace we're seeking is stocking up on macaroni. Buy one, get one free. So I bet this guy never knew that I wrote this. And speaking of that, when I stayed in Ireland, I lived in a stone cottage, and there was a really good-looking man that built the cottage. At least my Irish friend thought he was really good-looking. I mean, he didn't do a lot for me, but, She said, "That's a fine-looking specimen of an Irish man." And I woke up one morning, and he was literally at my window. He was doing whatever he was doing, tending the sheep or fixing the wall or something. And there were no curtains. So it was pretty funny. So I had to get a poem out of that because he was too cute. So I kind of invented a life for him because I didn't know anything about him. And the other part about this poem, and this is in the book that I wrote with Geraldine Mills, who's Irish, is that she gave me an Irish word. We kind of did some stuff about culture and learning about each other's culture. And she gave me an Irish word, and the only rule was that we had to use this word in a poem. And the word is cockshut, which is so weird. And anybody guess what it means? No, we don't have any Irish people here. It's a pretty common word, and it means dusk. The cock shut hour is dusk, because you put the cocks in the little barn or whatever, the little house that they stay in. So who knew, right? But, they had a lot of animals at this place we were staying, so I had to get this word in there. So it's called Iron Lock. And again, it's made up a life for this guy. I didn't know much about him except for he had a lot of kids. He didn't seem to work a lot, and he was by my window more than I would have liked. At the cock-shut hour, tips of heather uncovered by a slice of blood moon, he carries the last pail back, washes calloused hands with a cake of homemade soap. Tomorrow he'll be awakened by the braying of hungry children, have spoons to lay out, fire to light, while the rhythm of bluster, herd, and harvest continues, interrupted only by Sunday, when children are scrubbed and piled into the station wagon, Our Lady of Sorrows for Mass, then a fragrant lamb stew she has put to simmer before dawn. What does he ask himself in the creaking hours of darkness, when wind has a voice and ghost limbs reach through the keyhole? Not new to divisions of land nor death, he whispers, mea culpa. Grasses flatten, thresh in the same breath, and he lies next to her, hearing the iron lock of the gate test its strength. So I didn't really know anything about him, and he probably doesn't know I ever wrote a poem about him either. That's kind of cool, huh? I'll read a couple more. Are you still with me? Are you with me or against me? Isn't that? Yes. I'm getting political here. It's late. I just taught a class. So when I was 21, I did what some people do when they're 21, and I drove cross country in a beat-up old car that kept breaking down. It had a major oil leak, and it just kept breaking down, and we kept having to stop and put oil in it. And it was like rusted through. It was one of those things that we bought, and they duct taped it together. Anybody ever have this experience? Right before you bought it, they did that little duct tape thing and the Bondo, and it was like a really bad car. So this is called Driving the Mountain Pass After Rain, and it was actually in West Virginia. Hot enough to mute the mountains in haze, we stopped to buy oil in the local Kmart, the truck leaking. I was tired of traveling. Swarms of flies seemed to smell our sweat. I felt like something dead. I've forgotten what you said. I was 21. After the hairpin turn, we pulled into a general store, bought bread and cheese. An old woman punched numbers on an ancient cash register, gnarled fingers slow and stiff, her hair rolled up, dirty bandana tucked into the shapeless waist of her house dress. Behind her, tacked on the makeshift wall, a wedding ring quilt bloomed rose and forest green. In front, stacks of tin plates and cups, broken cigarette machine. You said something as we pooled our change, swatted flies. Our truck seemed perched on the precipice. Mountains hushed by recent rain. We were going somewhere. And we were going somewhere. We're all going somewhere, right? And I'm going to end with a kind of a silly one. Is that okay? We need silly. This is actually the first poem in the book. It's called Hidden. He says to her, "The way you wear your hair makes me feel younger." She dislikes the bother of it. Thick rope, heavy on her neck. But he asks for so little that she keeps it until the drudgery becomes the same as other monotonous tasks. Grocery shopping, washing clothes. Weighed down, she can't swim or run. Looks at other women with short hair. Men track them with their eyes. A friend tells her he likes her hair better short, much better. She begins to think she doesn't exist. She is a hank of hair. She remembers running fingers through the lightness of short curls. Now he sees her, unbuttoned and terrified. They will die in fewer years than they have lived, and yet it doesn't make them safer or more comfortable. He says to her, "I wish I had known you when you were young. This is what I imagined." She says, "You imagined wrong." Thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions, comments. Please ask questions. Questions are awesome.
As an artist, do you feel the internal pressure to reinvent yourself? Because after time, you use a lot of the same, not you in particular, but any artist finding their style sometimes tries to go against that. What do you do when you find yourself trying to reinvent yourself almost?
That's an amazing question. It's a wonderful question, and thank you for that. It is a really tough thing, and I have a mentor, inspirational person. His name is Baron Wormser, and I'm hoping to bring him to Easter next year. I put in for University Hour for him. But Baron is always my role model for doing that, because he's written like fiction and nonfiction, and he lived off the grid, and he's written poetry. He's just this Renaissance man, and every book is so different, and I think he just does it. And I always say, how do you do that? So I try, and one of the ways that I do it is to try to be experimental. Don't, be afraid to go down that road that's edgy and scary. I'm doing a workshop for some writers at the end of June that's on taboos. Write against, beyond your comfort zone. Create art that's beyond your comfort zone. If you have something you're really squirmy about, go to that place. And I try to do that. And also reading a lot. When you read a lot, you get ideas of things that you don't want to do. I mean, we were talking about that in my class about fiction we hate, but also things you might want to do. So great question, though. And always a challenge, because I hate, one of the things I really don't want is people to pick up a poem and say, oh, that's a Lisa C. Taylor poem. I mean, people criticize like Mary Oliver for that you know immediately, Mary Oliver poem. And I love Mary Oliver. I mean, she has a lot to offer, but it's hard to break her brand. And once you brand yourself, and people sit on their laurels because they get a lot of money for it. If you brand yourself, you create the next Harry Potter, and you're a millionaire. It's kind of hard to not want to keep creating that. But I think as an artist, it's part of your artistic temperament to challenge yourself, even if you fail. So, go to the edge, and then some. Is that's what I would say. Anything else? Any other questions? No? Well, thank you for coming, and please have some refreshments, and I'll stick around if you buy books and you want me to some. Yes, there are books on the book table. They have my first chapbook there. I do have other books that aren't there, but if you want me to sign books or talk to me, I'll stick around. Thank you.